If you hit a wall of fatigue every afternoon after lunch, if you need something sweet by the afternoon, or you can't function, if you're gaining weight around the middle despite eating reasonably well, and your doctor has run the blood tests and told you everything looks fine, that should be reassuring, but here's the problem. Those tests are not measuring the right thing. Picture a car engine running hot. The gauge on the dashboard still reads normal because the cooling system is working overtime to keep it there. The gauge looks fine, the engine is still under strain. That's what's happening in your body right now. And it can run quietly for 5 years, 10 years, sometimes 15 years before you are told that you have prediabetes or diabetes. There is a test that can catch this years earlier. Most people have never had it run. By the end of this video, you'll understand the 3 things: why the standard blood sugar test is the wrong tool for catching insulin resistance early, and what the number is actually telling you, what fasting insulin reveals that no standard blood test does, and how to turn a fasting insulin result into a clear, simple answer using one simple formula. I'm Michael Smith, naturopathic doctor. Here's what's actually happening. Every cell in your body has receptors. Think of them as locks and insulin as the key. When insulin fits into that lock, the cells open up and lets glucose in for energy. That's the normal system working exactly as it should. Insulin resistance happens when those locks start to seize up. The key still works, but only if you force it harder. So your pancreas responds by producing more and more insulin. More force on the key to keep glucose moving into the cells and the blood sugars in the normal range. That's the strain behind the engine we talked about a moment ago. The gauge reads normal because the system is compensating, not because everything is fine. So what does the standard blood test actually measure? Fasting glucose is the most commonly run blood sugar test. It measures the amount of sugar in your blood over an overnight fast. A useful number, but it only goes abnormal once the insulin system is starting to break. In most people, that means insulin resistance has been present for 5 to 10 years before fasting glucose crosses into a range that raises any red flags. HbA1c measures your average blood glucose over the previous 3 months. It's a reasonable tool for monitoring established diabetes and for catching people who are already well into the range of prediabetes. But it's an estimate, not a precise measurement. Anything that changes how long the red blood cells live in circulation, for example anemia or kidney disease, can skew the number in either direction. And it has the same core problem as fasting glucose. It's a downstream marker. It tells you about the damage that's already been done, not the process driving it. Here's a scenario that I regularly see in practice. Someone has a fasting glucose of 95, HbA1c of 5.4. Both sit comfortably in the normal range. Their doctor looks at the results and says there's no sign of prediabetes or diabetes. And that is technically accurate. But if you added a fasting insulin to that same blood draw, which requires no extra preparation and the test costs very little, it might come back at 14 or 16. Still inside the normal range on the lab report, but that number indicates insulin resistance has already started. The glucose is being held in the normal range by a pancreas working at 3 times the effort it should be, and the standard tests just didn't look for it. Fasting insulin is the number one thing that changes everything. It's a simple addition to a standard fasting blood draw. No extra preparation, just ask your doctor to include it in your next test. Optimal fasting insulin sits between 2 and 6. The lab reference range on your results will often be much wider than that, sometimes up to 24 or 25. That's because those ranges are built from a population of averages, and a significant proportion of that population is already metabolically compromised. A fasting insulin above a 10 indicates insulin resistance, even when glucose is normal. It may be mild insulin resistance, but it's still already happening. Remember the scenario from a moment ago. Glucose at 95, HbA1c at 5.4%, both normal on paper, but insulin at 14 or 16. That's the number that tells the real story, and insulin's not included on the standard lab test panels. You need to ask for it. Quick question, has your doctor ever tested your fasting insulin? Now, I don't mean glucose or HbA1c. specifically fasting insulin? Drop a yes or no in the comments, and based on what I've seen in practice, I'm going to guess no is the majority of the answers. This is the section most people never hear because most doctors aren't measuring insulin. So nobody explains what chronically elevated insulin actually does to the body. High circulating insulin drives fat storage, specifically around the abdomen and organs. Insulin is the body's primary fat storage hormone. When it's chronically elevated, fat burning is actively suppressed. This is why people can eat carefully, reduce calories, and still not lose weight around the middle. It's not a calorie problem, it's a hormonal environment that's been set to store energy rather than burn calories for fuel. Chronic high insulin also drives the post-meal energy crashes that many people just accept as normal. You eat, blood sugar rises, insulin spikes in response, often too high, glucose drops too fast. 90 minutes after eating, you're foggy and fatigued and looking for something sweet to eat. Over time, as insulin resistance progresses, the consequences accumulate. The risk of type 2 diabetes increases significantly, cardiovascular risk increases, fatty liver becomes more likely, and cognitive function can decline. Inflammation increases across the board, and many chronic illnesses are connected to insulin resistance. None of this shows up on a standard blood test until it's been running long enough to produce measurable damage. If you treat insulin resistance early, it can be fixed with diet and lifestyle changes. But if it's found too late, then medications may be needed. HOMA-IR stands for Homeostatic Model Assessment of Insulin Resistance. Bit of a mouthful, and it's calculated from two numbers which are your fasting insulin and your fasting glucose. The formula is on the screen. Fasting insulin multiplied by fasting glucose divided by 405. That's the version for US units, and if your lab reports glucose in different units, like in Australia or Europe, the formula is fasting insulin multiplied by fasting glucose divided by 22.5. Below 1.0 is optimal. Between 1.0 and 2.0 warrants attention. Above 2.0 means insulin resistance is present. Above 3.0 is significant. If you have a recent fasting insulin result, you can calculate this right now. I'll link a free calculator in the description below. And here's what to do with this. Step 1, the next time you have a blood draw, ask your doctor to add fasting insulin to the panel. One addition to a fasting test you're likely having anyway, or at Planet Naturopath, we test insulin as part of our comprehensive pathology panels. We can organize testing in many countries, including the US, Australia, and the UK. Step 2, if you already have a recent fasting insulin result, calculate your HOMA-IR today and see if it's below 1.0. If your fasting insulin is above 10, the lifestyle levers that directly improve insulin sensitivity are the most powerful things you can do right now. Cutting liquid fructose and refined carbohydrates reduces the insulin load driving insulin production. Strength training and walking after meals both improve insulin sensitivity directly, not as a side effect, as the primary mechanism to bring down insulin. Some form of time-restricted eating, even just a 12 to 14 hour overnight fast, gives insulin levels time to come down rather than staying chronically elevated. For someone with early insulin resistance, consistent application of those three things can produce measurable changes to your insulin results within 8 to 12 weeks. If you want help understanding your specific numbers or getting a personalized treatment plan just for you, or if you need help with getting any of the testing done, I'll leave a description in the below. That's what I do in consulting, and at Planet Naturopath, we can organize most tests for you. If you have any questions or comments, leave a comment below.